Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Barnhart. Thank you so much for stopping by. So, lately I've been doing a lot of research on ancient cultures, specifically like ancient Greek cultures, the Spartans and the Athenians, and then I go check ancient Rome. And I'm all over the world. I really enjoy cultures and their traditions and their religions and their rituals and routines and habits and all that kind of stuff, all that jazz. You know what I'm talking about? Like all the things that make a culture, like what they eat and how they talk and how they dress, and we're gonna talk about that today. So the word culture, and then you have the word cult, and then you have the word tradition, and then religion, and then routine and ritual and habitat and habit. It all seems very similar to me. They all seem like the lines between these words, the definitions between these words are very blurry. Is that just me? Or even though habitat there, but the rest of them, they're all pretty much the same thing. I'm going to start with religions and traditions because I think that's the easiest one. So traditions are things you do every day, every month, every year, every week. Like every Monday it's tradition, I go to work. Every Friday we order pizza, tradition, we watch movies. Those are traditions. And then religions are traditions, but in the name of God. That's what I think religions are. Like, we eat this food because it's for God. We wear this kind of clothing because for God. We don't eat that kind of food because for God. That's a religion. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. But then, if you really want to, you could say that everything you do is for God. So then, I'm going to take a shower for God, and I'm going to do this for God, and that for God. And then next thing you know, your whole life and everything you do is a religion. Does that make sense? Some people are like that, I think. And so your religion has traditions, but then just traditions on themselves. Traditions like going to work every Monday becomes a routine, right? And then you wouldn't so much call it a tradition, but you'd call it a routine for some reason, even though it's pretty much the same thing. So then, these routines, and then routines for some reason become rituals, no? After a while, I feel like, rituals are routines for religions, maybe. Is that right? Like, it's a routine that every day after I come home from work, I have a joint or something. I have a drink or whatever it is you do after you come home from work. And that routine kind of becomes like a ritual, There's that's what rituals... And then your culture is the things you do because that's what your culture thinks is cool. And the cool things is what makes up a culture. Like back in the day, it used to be really cool in my culture, like 50 years ago, to smoke cigarettes. Everybody was smoking all the time. It was the cool thing to do in my culture, so everybody smoked. And now it's not so much a cool thing, but there are other cool things that are coming up, so that's what a culture is. That's what a culture is, yeah. But smoking is a bad habit, and bad traditions will have a bad effect on you. And so you want good habits, you want a good eating habit. You want to have a good traditional meal, Right now in my culture, it's almost traditional that every city has a McDonald's or a Burger King or something like that. And so fast food is becoming quite the tradition, quite the routine in my culture. It's pretty sad. And if you have a good eating habit, then chances are you can work on those good habits, because good habits can create other good habits, Like, if you eat well, then chances are you'll have enough energy to start exercising or be more active in general, That's a good lifestyle right there, a good culture. And the routines and the habits and the traditions that you have define you, right? Like, if you smoke a lot, then you're a smoker. If you drink after you come home from work, then you're an alcoholic, maybe. If you exercise regularly, then you're like an athlete. Those, it defines you. They label us, I don't know. It's a good conversation. And the older tradition, the longer people have been doing something, whether it be eating a kind of food or dressing a certain way or speaking a kind of language, the longer that they've been doing it, it's almost like the more precious it becomes, the more important it becomes. It's kind of like, if you think about it, it's kind of like how we preserve old artifacts, these old artifacts become so fragile and delicate, these old books or these old statues, and so we're so careful with them, and they're so beautiful, even though the things we're doing today might be beautiful. I don't know, it's weird. And there are so many cultures that work so hard not to disappear. Like, some cultures work very hard to preserve their traditions and their ways of life. And unfortunately, every tradition, every routine, every habit breaks eventually. Think of all the cultures that have come and gone. I don't know. I say that, but then again, they're there, but they're just dressed differently. Does that make sense? This is the kind of stuff I love talking about, which is why I really appreciate you, because not a lot of people want to hear this. And then one thing that's really important to know is that culture, routines, and traditions isn't just a group effort, but it's an individual thing. Like, you have your own individual culture. I have my own individual culture, my own personal routines, my traditions, my religions, whatever it is. It's a personal thing, and then it grows, like, that's why the best way to lead is by example, and that, you're an example of your tradition, your culture, and your habits. You are their example. I don't know, how far can we go with this, really? I don't know, maybe it's a good time to call it a quit, I'll talk to you later, maybe, I don't know, hopefully next week. We'll try and make these videos a tradition.